Hi, and welcome to In the Metal, the online show that takes a deep look in behind the dial and see what's happening, what makes the watches tick in the world of independent watchmaking. We have been absolutely blessed with the standard of the people that we have had on from we started a couple of months ago. And it's hard to imagine that the time has just flown round. So what we're going to do tonight, we have a fantastic guest returning, and we're going to take a look at one of the things that what we've wanted to do within the metal, which is to take a look at a specific aspect of the watchmaker's life. One of the jobs that he has to do, because there are dozens and dozens of different skill sets required to create one masterpiece. And tonight we're going to take a look at the art of restoration, because some of these watches, timepieces, go back hundreds of years. We're going to take a close look at a watch tonight that's 130 years old and has been restored by our very special friend, more than guest, Mr. John McGonigle. We're also going to have an exclusive tonight as well, because John is about to release his brand new brand. It's very Irish based. It's, as we say, it's Irish with a Swiss movement, and it's called Ulan. And we're going to have a scoop on that one this evening. So, everyone, I would like you to welcome my partner in time, partner in crime from North Carolina in the United States. He is former Anthrax heavy metal six-string shredder, lead guitarist, 30 million album sales, 3 Grammy nominations, and today a master watchmaker in his own right, Mr. Dan Spitz. Good evening and welcome.
What's up, Johnny, my man? How you doing?
What's the story, my man? You keeping well?
I can do all that cool stuff, but I still can't boil a bag of rice, bro.
Hey, is that decoration behind you? Is that the same as that was on your guitar? One of your guitars?
That's my decal. I refinished it to look like Van Halen's guitar.
So I would have Halen's guitar. Cool as
the vintage Van Halen guitar. I quested after one of those machines for a very long time. I don't have room in here for what's called an agathon, which will be my next machine as soon as I get out of here. We need to make our own lathe bits, tooling, specialized. If we have to do a special, especially manufacturing, every little slot or cut, it doesn't adhere to just being able to purchase a tool. They have to be custom made and custom filed. And this is an old Deckel German machine that was destroyed, and I brought it back to life, and I kind of modified it so it would do what an agathon does without water, unfortunately. But it'll accomplish all my missions, and it's I personally think after a watchmaker comes out of school and purchases his first watchmaking lathe, this is an overlooked thing, but I think this should be their second machine that they purchase. It eases their entire life and opens up, the abilities to make your own tools, save tons of money, and get the job done. So sorry to break into all seriousness right away, but it's been good for me this week. I just completed the first 5 great wheels for my timepiece with what's called a rounding up tool arms, an old watchmaker's tool that we use by manual labor, let's say, to file the teeth. And round them after they've come off the regular machines. If they have little nibs on them and so forth, it cleans them up and shapes them a certain way. And when they made machines back then, they made them as a piece of art. So the wheel that we would turn manually like this to make it go, the arms within it had this pattern in it, and it's just so beautiful. It's unbelievable. So I've incorporated that into the great wheel, which is an offset great wheel in my movement that you'll be able to see turning. It's a lot of work, but came out
fantastic.
fabulous. Yeah, so hard at work. So if my eyes start going like this, but my brain starts going like this. You know why?
Tell me about it.
How you doing over there, Johnny boy?
Everything is fantastic here. We're getting like it is. I'm keeping very busy. It's thankfully I really love what I do. So like yourself, it's it's not a job. It's something that you throw yourself into fully, and I enjoy it, seeing a lot of what's happening, some of the new pieces that are coming out. I work with a great friend of mine, Pietro Tomayer from the limited edition. Do a lot of writing, a lot of content there, as well as working on the occasional website, which has gone live this week as well. So,
yeah.
So
well, Pietro rules. That's all I can say. If you don't know who Pietro is, you all need to find Pietro.
Yeah, there's Pietro's comment. Thank you very much indeed, Pietro. I appreciate the effort that goes in. So, and even whenever this is over tonight, we will do. There's still a lot of stuff to be done tonight. So,
well, I know we got another crazy on here.
We sure do.
And with some killer news and great stories, and a watchmaker's work never stops. We're never satisfied. We're never happy as an independent. We're always pushing the boundaries. Very similar to being, in that thrash metal mindset of music. We're never happy. We're never done unless someone pushes us to be done. And this gentleman is once again pushing those boundaries into a new territory, and he kicks ass at everything he does. So,
well,
we're about to find out about some kick ass.
We sure are. So we're going to, you see, the guest that we have back tonight, or have tonight, is a man who, on the day that we were going live with our first episode, I happened to be in telephone conversation with him, and I said, "Oh, we're doing this tonight," and he's go, "Wow, that's fantastic! I wish you the very best of luck." And I said, "Thank you very much," and we hope that we will be able to get a chat with you someday on it, and because that's the kind of thing that we want to do. And he's going, "Oh yeah, great, I'd be happy." And I just said, "What about tonight?" And he said, "Well, you tell him, John." What did he say? So
I was honored to be part on the prologue.
On the prologue. So
yeah.
So everyone would just like to welcome. It's John McGonigle, and who is one of boy, John, do you like the expression master watchmaker?
Yeah.
No.
I don't think any of us really like that.
Really? That's interesting, because we were talking about this tonight because it's the way that people like me would perceive someone like yourself. So John has been let's put it this way, one of the world's finest watchmakers, and who's really at the top of his game, and a man who is meticulous in detail. That if a watch has been worked on by John, it is absolutely blemish free, or as close as is humanly possible to achieve. So, John, welcome, and thank you for returning tonight. And we're hopefully going to have a bit of fun looking at some of your the work that you've been doing recently, and also some big news that you have to break. You could choose to do that at any time. You could do that now, or we could do it in half an hour's time, whatever you prefer.
What's up, John?
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be back, guys. How are you, Dan?
Very good. So good to see you again.
And you. Congratulations on your great wheels. You must post a photograph up soon. I'm sure you will on Instagram if you haven't already, but I'm dying to see them. I think the way you made them as well is quite interesting and quite pertinent to what we're going to discuss this evening. You used traditional techniques, which, if you had a restoration to do that needed a wheel, that's how you do it. It's and a lot of people would say it's the best way to do it as well, But
absolutely,
yeah.
So
I
think that's what we have when we and Johnny agreed that we would get together and do this series, we agreed that it would be quite different than anything that's ever been done before, because I don't care and I don't have to care. So we'd like to get the true information about the crazy watchmaker, you know, locked in his room with all these machines, and how we really operate, even at levels where we can acquire the tools we need, the machines we need, or have friends that have the machines we can't afford. But in the end result, all that schooling and what we learned in school, like you just said about how to make wheels the traditional way, is still the best way, and that's what we do. And it's an art. And I know you were gonna touch upon that tonight. You know, my background in restoration for so many years, and you know that's how we get our experience. And you're once again taking it to a new level with what you're about to tell us.
But I think most of the independents, or most of those who would eventually go into make a watch, would have come from restoration backgrounds, as opposed to, say, after sales service or directly training to make a watch. Some of the schools, you know, you mentioned that that school in France in can't remember the name of the town, where all those amazing watchmakers are coming from at the moment. Johnny.
That's Switzerland.
No, not Besançon. It's closer to Switzerland. I just have a mental blank. But they take all of the top students from the watchmaking schools throughout France, and they do a 1-year course. It's like a postgrad course where they learn how to design on CAD, and then produce their watches, and then finish them to the highest level. And so they've been making tourbillons, they've made perpetual calendars. I've worked with some of these guys in Clara, and they're amazing watchmakers. So they're almost the exception in that they're, you know, bypassing the restoration, and they're going straight to actually making watches. But for the most part, I think most independents have restoration as part of their, the mainstay of their background, really.
Yeah. I think
George Daniels used to say that, you know, he did restoration for so many years, and when you might get a watch in that is missing a component, or it's got a broken component, you have to redesign, make, and finish the part so it blends into what was already there. And in doing so, if you've done that for enough years, you'll eventually have made virtually every part of the watch. So making a watch is not such a gigantic step at that point. So I think we owe a lot to restoration.
I agree wholeheartedly. And now what I'm trying to let people know, young watchmakers or watchmakers still in school, is that those 972 jobs that you have to learn, that George Daniels wrote in his book that we have to be as watchmakers to make our own timepiece, has just increased now, because we have to learn CAD, really, at least CAD, to be able to help me, even in restoration work. It helps us greatly to, if we have let's say in a chronograph, a mounted minute recorder spring is very common to break. And I know in the old days when I was restoring timepieces, if that broke, it was really difficult to make by hand, if not impossible. We wouldn't, if the watch didn't warrant the work, and now it got put in a drawer and it was gone forever. Hence why we have vintage watches in low numbers right now. But that knowing CAD now enables us to remake those parts more swiftly, and at least get all the dimensions down. And I see a lot of the schools are adding that on, a nice 1-year course to learn SolidWorks or something similar like that. Definitely, please take the
Absolutely. I think it's such a valuable tool, because even if you're making the parts, you can, you know, measure up, design, outsource the fabrication of the part, maybe do additional functions once you get it back. And of course, you know, there's still, when it comes off the machine, there's still an awful lot of work to do. Because
I think some people, I don't want them to be scared and think, oh, that's not traditional watchmaking, I'm not going to be doing CNC work, so I don't need that course. I think you should certainly rethink that, especially you could hear John also saying the same thing. We all work with it, all independents. We need to, or we have to hire someone to do it at one point in time, and that's costly. So, yeah.
And I think as well, it's useful to think of CAD as a drawing board, and a CNC as a fret saw, very sophisticated fret saw, in that you are the same thought process goes into designing a part on a 3D CAD tool as it does on a drawing board. Like you're trying to produce a part in metal, and so you're using the dimensioning, you're working with space, and at that point as well where you introduce the aesthetic designs and shapes, which, as we'll see later on in the watch we're going to look at, are completely over the top and unnecessary to the function of the watch, but important as high-end, high-grade watches, because they don't just serve a function to either tell the time or act as a stopwatch or of a calendar function. They also have to do it in a almost poetic fashion. They have to do it in a beautiful way, really, to to satisfy the both craftsmanship and the collector.
Yeah, we have to keep those old parts exactly as they were, John. And it makes life a little bit easier, even though when we went to school, and nowadays still, it's that pain of learning how to draw it manually. In the schools now, they're still taught that. You still have to know that. It's just that CAD will help you bring everything into 3D. We can expand the parts. Listen, I just went myself for a year of that to get where I am here. I didn't know how to do that, so I'm only pushing it because it opened up my whole world. So once you can extract that part in 3D, you were looking at the real part. The first few times you do it and you see your watch part there, it's mind blowing. You're like, wow, this is so cool, man. Yeah. Like, wow, all the part. I wish I had this many years ago when I was doing a lot of Patek Philippe restorations for many years in my workshop. It would have helped tremendously. I wish I would have learned it. So we're pushers. We're like drug pushers, but instead of drugs, like in the old days when I was young playing music, instead of drugs, you were pushing good stuff on you.
It is. That makes you feel good in a different way.
We still have to get some of those stories out of you, Dan. But like, I saw a really good use of CAD on Facebook. I think it was today, and it was on a clock. I wish I knew who did it. It was a brilliant post. There was a series of images followed by a video, and it was of a very large wheel, probably a great wheel for a clock, and it was about the diameter of my head. It was a very large component, but instead of being round, it was not out of flat, as in the flat plane. If you look at it straight on, the plan. I should get my hands into the camera. If you look at the plan, one side was completely flattened. A toothed gear, you kind of say, take the dimensions off it and make a new one. But they took the dimensions off it and drew a theoretically correct wheel. And then they used vices, blow torches, pliers, and just coaxed it into shape until it matched up with the CAD drawing. And it was fantastic. And then they refinished it, mounted it on the axe. And if anybody out there who's watching this has seen that post, it'd be nice to know who it is, because it's on Facebook you make contact with an awful lot of people who you don't know personally, or you just share the same passion. And so I don't know this person, but it was a really cool job and a very interesting mixture of the old, as in the piece he was working on, and and a bang up to date tool. So it was quite smart.
Social media is so amazing for these younger watchmakers, isn't it, John? What a tool that we wish we had way back when, right?
But I'm sure you, and certainly you'd see stuff on Facebook and you kind of go, oh, that's brilliant. You get an idea, or you come away with a new technique. There's such a wealth of ideas that are shared.
It's incredible. And what we had was
really
in America, we had a magazine called Horological Times way back then. and
Yeah.
hunting for
I
pictures
remember
of
it, yeah.
what's overseas. What are people doing? That's all. It was like in music when we would just open up the big double album of like the Allman Brothers at Fillmore East and just like stare at it for like endless hours as your friend was like cleaning the seeds out of the weed, trying to roll joints and stuff back. Now the kids don't even have seeds in their weed. I don't know anything about that because I don't do any drugs or anything like that. I could never do what I do here and do drugs. It's just residual drugs that's left in my head.
Brilliant.
But no,
The psychedelic variety.
there's a wealth of information out there, and really, if you're a young watchmaker, listen to John, the guests that me and Johnny have on here each week. Listen to them, try to get in their brain and utilize social media, and not only for like John said, seeing incredible stuff, but you have your own free television station, you have your own free magazine that will be Instagram. It's free. Utilize it to push your art, whatever your art will be. It's free. We didn't have those luxuries back then. We had to go learn from other masters and take a job that we might not even like just to learn something for a year, and that would be a year of our life we gave away. You can really move forward more swiftly nowadays. So anyway, I'm done pushing more stuff on you. Let's get back to John and talk about restoration. John, your history in restoration quickly as at the bench has been.
Yeah, it's. I kind of started in the same way as you did. My first job out of college was doing trade repairs. So you do about 15 watches a day, and you'd have a pile on one side, the in and the, you're trying to get them across the bench to the out sector. So I did that for about about 2 years, both in England and in Ireland, and. You learn no matter what you're doing. I saw an awful lot of stuff and everything like that, and learn how to manage my work. But ultimately, I really wanted to get much deeper into watches and understand them so much more, because it's frustrating taking something apart that you're scared of, cleaning it and putting it back together. You don't dare do too much to it in case you wreck it. The consequences of that are grave, because you don't have someone beside you who can get you out of trouble. So you intervene as little as possible to get the watch going, and so it was good for me to have experienced that. But I knew that I didn't want to keep working like that. So best way of getting the knowledge I wanted was to go to Switzerland. So I went to WOSTEP. Now I only did the 5-month course, the refresher course, or the cours de perfectionnement, as they called it at the time, where you were meant to already have a watchmaking qualification and some experience, and then they took you and brushed up your knowledge, and but it was so much more than that. It was in a sense.
What year was that, John?
It was 1991, and so Antoine Simonet was the only teacher there at the time, and
my teacher.
we were in the old building, not the current one, and there was some expansion works going on there, so you'd workmen coming in and out with wheelbarrows and stuff like that. It was a little chaotic, but you had Peter Speak on the course at the same time. He was doing the complicated course while I was doing the refresher course. And the formal part of it, so the wheel flattening, end plays, hairspring making, escapements, that sort of thing, chronographs, that was easy enough for me, because I'd already spent 3 years at a Swiss school in Dublin. And so people with varying degrees of experience, and depending on which schools they'd gone to and what they've done since. So for coming from the school I'd come from, that wasn't the most challenging part. What was challenging was the pieces of restoration that we were given. And we weren't necessarily given really nice pieces. We were given pieces, many of them enough now, you know, and they could have bits missing and bits broken. They could have had a really, really rough life. And we had to find, we didn't know, it wasn't treated like a school piece where you had to give it back in absolutely pristine condition. It was a real world experience. You had to use what's available, like maybe modify, like we a hell of a lot of old parts, and we could root through the parts box, take whatever we needed out, modify it. In some cases, you'd have to completely remake parts, but it really taught you how to use your ingenuity.
Right.
And I think for the short course that it was, the amount of watchmakers that came from there and went on to really high positions in the watch industry, it was quite phenomenal, you know.
Isn't it?
And I think an awful lot of it was.
You know, it's crazy because I was there in 94, 95 in the new building with Antoine Simonet as my instructor as well.
Yeah.
And that's before he was just starting the implementation of trying to push the course to any other schools that would have it around the world, as we needed good watchmakers taught correctly. And I think Antoine Simonet, you know, he's the godfather, you know, I keep pushing him out there to show people exactly what you just said. I didn't mean to interrupt you, John, at the very end there, is to reaffirm everyone. I've been saying this, from the time that you went to the time around where I went, this one man not only wrote this curriculum and showed us how to work in a school environment completely different than anywhere else, but he launched people such as yourself, me. I mean, it's endless names that have just come out of that short time period that, you know, he was there doing his thing and you know, letting people in the school go at their own pace to catch the fastest person. And like you said, that real world experience you just explained, I would like anyone that's a watchmaker, a newer watchmaker, or that wants to go into after sales service to understand this is how we worked back then. I would have draws and draws, endless draws of random parts. We would go to flea markets and marts we had in America every month and just spend all our money on parts, even though we didn't need them, just boxes of parts, because the past generation watchmakers were dying. They were in their 80s. It was usually their wife that was still there selling them and would only sell them to someone who was would do something with them. So John is explaining, we would reach in our drawer and we would try to cross-reference it with the books we have to get something close. And then we would have to modify it. And that's how we worked in true restorations. Then we come across the part, like John said, you know, we couldn't find it. We don't have it, so we got to make it. Now it's completely different, John. There is no parts for, you know, unless someone hoarded them. You know, we have to make them all, this generation.
Yes.
Well, I am going to suggest that we take a look at one of the projects that you've worked on most recently, John, because we've got quite a bit to fit in here this evening. And, you know, because what you're talking about, Dan, about the collecting of parts and going to the marts and acquiring bits and pieces as you go along, because 2 points. One of the things is, yes, the watchmakers are getting older. I have a wonderful friend who's a local watchmaker, but man, he's in his 80s, and you know, apart from traveling a considerable distance, there's nobody really local taking this up. And you touched on the Swiss Irish Institute of Horology, John, as well, where you were fortunate enough to have 3 years there. That's gone. So there's no formal centre of education here in Ireland anymore for budding watchmakers. They have to go across the water to England, at least England, or perhaps over to Switzerland or onto the continent. Not necessarily Switzerland, but I'm sure Germany, France, Spain all have their watchmaking academies. We don't have one here in Ireland anymore.
Or Cambodia, where my brother works.
Totally amazing. What a setup they've created there, isn't it? It's state of the art. It's
incredible.
It's state of the art and fantastic to see that. And you can be sure, because
have you seen it, Dan?
No.
Yeah, it's a new academy in
Dan,
Cambodia.
you'd
Really?
weep if you saw the equipment. It's incredible.
In
Yeah, no, have a
Cambodia,
look.
like
It's
Cambodia,
I think it's the Cambodia. Yeah, And,
Wow.
Amazing, brilliant.
my brother Anthony is the teacher there. So
Wow, I
Get,
didn't know that.
neither did I. Flipping heck.
Is he
Are
also a
you
Wilson
guys?
dude?
Is there a McGonigle everywhere? Is
Really?
there?
He's
Yeah,
multiplying
there is.
later in
Yeah.
life.
That's fascinating. That's
At
brilliant.
least one on each continent.
Yeah, that's
Wow,
brilliant.
No,
I'm gonna look
check
that
it
up
out. I think it's the Prince Watchmaking School or Prince Horology. But if you put in Watchmaking School Cambodia, it's extraordinary. You will flip out when you see the equipment. It's completely straight to the art.
Yeah, I'm a
I
gear-
had never
I'm a
seen
gear
a school
freak.
like it in Switzerland.
Wow.
Yeah, weird like this.
Yeah. So, hey, wouldn't it be nice if one day we could, John, if we could get some kind of an institute or an academy or a course that at least a starter course or an entry level that gets people involved in watchmaking in Ireland, because people are buying watches and they're buying mechanical watches with increasing popularity nowadays. And every single one of those watches is going to require servicing throughout its lifetime. If you do not service your watch the recommended, there's maybe 5 years, 3 years, 5 years. People will always stretch that out as long as possible. But you'll actually start wearing parts down, and that will need to be replaced, and they're expensive components. And so I think I would love to see, in my time, I'd love to see some academy starting up again here in Ireland. And maybe, hey, we'll talk about that another day, because I wanted on this occasion, because it's a special edition for me, because it's something that I wanted to sort of move in this direction, and that is to look at a specific field of expertise, of craftsmanship within the life of the watchmaker. And today, one of the watches that you were working on recently, John, is 130 years old. And now that's old by our standards, but in the terms of watchmaking, it's pretty young actually, because so watch back to I was looking at a guy we've been talking to in the next few weeks. 1740, I think, was the first valet de jeu pocket watch. So you're going back, that's 300 years, all but a few years here. So so this,
well, you go back 500 years, because the first okay, they're closer to clocks than watches, but the first portable timepieces were from the 1500s.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And it's all based on the same principles, the same fundamental values. Yes, it's been refined. Yes, it's been advanced over the years. But
that's right. Yeah,
we're going to look at some parts now.
You'll have two-tooth gears. You'll have mainsprings. You'll have all of the essential organs of the watch, like the power, the train, the escapement, the balance. All there. They cracked that 500 years ago. Now, there's been so much evolution since, obviously, but they're extraordinary pieces, and it beggars belief that they were made 500 years ago just with files, and you can just imagine how crude those were.
No electricity,
So
and I think that's why I periodically speak about the independent watchmakers that are making their own timepieces. That we use the same metals that they used back then, because we did restorations for so long and we know what lasts. And the only thing they were messing with back then, from 500 years ago till now, the advancement was always mainly in the escapement, changing escapements, finding better ways to change one-way rotation of the wheels being pushed from the mainspring to a back and forth motion that the balance and the hairspring need with recoil rebound. So we just get, basically the wheels and the hairspring and the balance stayed the same from ship chronometers to wristwatches. It's always messing with the escapement, like I'm messing with the escapement on mine. Same thing, no oil, made out of titanium, same thing. But people like John and people like me, we know what lasts. Certain kinds of brass last, certain kind of steel last. We don't like to dive into silicon and all this stuff that's trial and error where there'll be no parts later on. We want whatever we work on to be able to be traditionally repaired for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ahead by anyone that comes out of a good school and has the machines. Everything we work on, you don't have to worry about parts. Because I know that's a big thing, John. I don't know if you know that in the collectors, they're always like, why should I buy an Independence piece? How am I going to get it fixed if it breaks? And they don't realize that it's the other way around, that it's the big companies that they only have to, supply you with parts for 20 years. That's the Swiss law, first of all. And after that, they won't even sell parts to independent watchmakers to repair them unless they do 19 different courses that they keep changing every 18 months and monopolize it. So you're actually way better off working with an independent, no matter what they're working on, because anything they're doing can be repaired by any competent watchmaker who's traditionally trained.
Well,
I think Jurgensen is a great example of that. Like in 130 years, we haven't even become more refined, and so do you have any images over there, Johnny?
We're going. That's why I was just waiting for the opportunity to run with this, because I have about 7 or 8 images that I wanted to run. The watch that we're talking about is this. It is a Jules Jurgensen. It is a minute repeater with Rattrapant split-second chronograph. Is that the correct definition of it, John?
Yes, like Rattrapant is French for split-second chronograph, so it's a split-second chronograph, or Rattrapant chronograph.
And the age of that watch, you reckon, is 130 years? So it's from 1890.
Yes, I can't recall the exact year, but yeah,
that's okay.
There.
We'll let you off of that.
Yeah.
It's 1890.
Okay. Just for a couple of.
Go ahead.
A couple of things about just from what we see there. I had the most unusual experience with the watch, because the client had just bought it. He gave it to me and said, "Listen, I want it brought back to as close to original condition as possible." And he had just purchased and handed it straight over to me. So when I got home, I saw that I couldn't get to change the time on it, and I thought that there was something wrong with the mechanism, either something out of place or missing or something. So I took it apart and I couldn't see anything wrong. In fact, the watch is in really nice, like the components were really nicely original. And I could only imagine that something was missing, something very, very small. And I emailed the client and said, "Listen, I've never had to do this before, but how do you set the time with your watch?" And he said, "I don't know. I just bought the thing." I said, "Okay."
That's awesome.
Don't worry about it.
Let's take a look at what you had to work with anyway. So this is
if you could go back to the last image,
to the watch itself.
To the watch itself. I saw that there was a mechanism in the bow. So can you use your cursor to hover over the bow just to show?
I don't think it works that way. The bow, obviously.
Oh, you can't. Okay, right.
No.
It's the loop or the hoop around the winder.
The crown.
Okay.
Yeah.
The crown. So to set the time, the way it is, it only winds, okay, and you can't pull it out the way you would in a normal watch. So you take the bow and you pivot it until it's right over the dial, and then you can feel a little bit of resistance, and you keep pushing until it's touching the bezel, and then you can do it. And it was a mechanism that was specific to Jurgensen, and it's a very elegant system. The other thing you'll notice is if you see the pushers at 12 o'clock and close to 2 o'clock, they're for the chronograph, and they only work when the lid is open. So it's a protection. You can see when the lid closes, it's the rim of the lid stops those pushers from functioning.
Okay. That's the backside of it. That's the backside of it.
Beautiful.
But, Beautiful indeed, Dan. I watched John working on this watch over the last number of weeks. He has been given updates on the progress of the restoration on it. And it just blew me away. The complexity, the sophistication, the absolute beauty of those little components that were manufactured. 1890, there was no electricity, guys, was there, so to speak? So you're talking literally hand machined components.
I don't think you know, people really do realize, because they just think, you know, it's a pocket watch back then. Oh, well, that's pretty cool and it's big. But let's put that into perspective. That, you know, they were working under oil lamps and candles, and you know, the lathes that we have here are run by motors and electricity. Even though they're very old, like my Chablin is from the 30s. They were, you know, turning a wheel by hand and making what you're seeing right now. And if that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will.
How about that?
Yeah, that's the pincers for the split seconds mechanism, or the retropont mechanism.
Yeah,
that has that grips the split seconds wheel, and on the other side, on the dial side of the split seconds wheel, you have the split seconds hand. So when those pincers are closed, it grips the wheel and stops it moving, while the chronograph continues to move around. Now you've a double, you would have photographed there, Johnny, I think, with the two wheels in this. Do you have that?
Okay, do I have that one? I don't know if I have that one uploaded. No, I don't have that one uploaded.
Maybe if you go back to the
overview of the movement.
If you go back to the overview of the movement on the other side.
There you go.
There you go. Now there you can see, if it's possible to enlarge that.
I can't expand that.
Okay.
Let me see. Does that no?
Sorry. No. I just
go ahead.
If you okay, on the top. So running from the center of the photograph towards about the 7:30 position, you can see those that pincers. It's hard to pick it out because there's so many other components there. But there's a little square at the short end, so at the end furthest from the center, and when that rotates, that actually opens and closes the pincer. In the center, you can see the chronograph wheel. It's underneath the bridge, and you have a heart piece, so a heart-shaped cam resting on top. And well, it's pushed on top, so it turns with the chronograph wheel. And the retropont wheel has been removed. That has a lever that presses against that heart cam piece. So when the pincers are closed and they block the retropont wheel, the chronograph continues to rotate. The retropont obviously is stationary. But when you push the button to open the pincers again, it's on the retropont wheel, is pressing against the heart piece, and it centers. So it catches up with the chronograph wheel, and as a consequence as well, the two hands which have diverged on the dial side, they catch up with the chronograph wheel. The split seconds wheel catches up with the.
So see if we can look at that a little bit closer. This absolutely blew me away. So there is.
That's the picture we're looking for, bro.
Hey, this is multitasking here, man. This is doing image editing on the hoof. Let me tell you.
Well, so there you trying to explain how a retropont works, because not many people get to see this. I know when I went to early days in school, this is one of the most complicated mechanisms, because I was a chronograph freak, that you could get, try to get your hands on. It's seriously complicated. And for people wondering what this was used for, let's say we had two runners running a race, or a lot of runners, and you needed to time the first runner and the second runner. This is what this stopwatch was used for. You could time two separate people and get two separate readings.
Yeah, I have a split second chronograph myself, and I absolutely love it. And John's going to be becoming familiar with it in the near future. I am.
You got
to say, you told me. Another thing that's worth noting is, if you can see the center wheel, so that's the wheel. It's underneath the split seconds wheel and the chronograph wheel. You have a bridge, and then you have a wheel with larger teeth. The edge of it just goes over the rim of the balance. Okay, that's the center wheel. So that's your minute hand would be geared into that. Like you have a pinion on the other side that's mounted directly onto that wheel. So that wheel runs an hour. It's got a hole drilled right through it for the chronograph wheel. Okay, and it's a fairly thick movement because you've got a miniature piece on the other side. And so on the other side, you've another pinion carrying 3 cams. You've got your hour wheel on this side with the hole through it, the chronograph wheel going through that, and then your split seconds wheel going through the entire thing. It's incredibly difficult today to hand make. To make with the machines that we have, a split seconds wheel that length is horribly difficult, because when you start to, if you start with a hardened piece of metal and cut it with tungsten carbide tools, which we have the luxury of having that they didn't have, if you cut that much blued metal away, you have tension built up inside the axe, inside the material, that when you've whittled it down to the dimension required to pass through the chronograph wheel, it will distort. Like when you harden material, there are always distortions in it. And when you machine it, those distortions can come to the surface, or rather the surface comes down to those distortions, and it can actually physically bend the material. So what they had done was they cut that from soft steel, mild steel, and then they would have hardened it. But the thermic shock of that shaft hitting hot oil or hot water, to do that, to harden it sufficiently without distortion, is very difficult. And I would say that they made several of them.
Oh yeah,
that they eventually used in the watch.
Yeah, absolutely made several.
So,
we know that from ourselves, John. From John's trying to explain hardening and tempering. Many people who might be listening in other industries, you just think it's hardening and tempering. But when our parts get this small, and this is a pocket watch, remember, it gets smaller to wristwatches for us. Usually, they deform. And that's why if you do follow watchmakers, and you can see nowadays on social media, some of us bluing things, and we have it wrapped that little part in tons and tons of iron wire, and then it's inside another little box. You're getting the point of what John is speaking about. We're trying to stop that deformation from happening and having to start completely over and make that part from scratch again. And we've only learned that from bad experiences. Unfortunately.
I saw a question. Yeah, exactly. I saw a question flash up from Bernard. He asks if the hairspring is thermically blued as well, and it is. And it's also very difficult to make a hairspring. So to put all the bends, it's got an overcoil in it. To make all of those bends and not remove the blue, it's very, very hard, and it's impeccable. But
beautiful piece. I mean, my whole goal for getting into complications, John, was I saw my first chronograph at very early in my life, and that was kind of my goal way back when. And getting to do pieces like this, I don't know if even people understand what they're looking at. And I try to explain to them, chronographs and split second chronographs, how they work with all the little levers that need to go and actuate at exact moments in time and not break. And you're showing a lot of people watching here how complicated our timepieces can be, but still be robust and last this long and work. They'll be here forever as long as they're taken care of properly. Some of the things you could look out for, like on this picture here, you could see on the left around 7 o'clock, there's very thin springs that hold certain parts in tension, and that tension has to be exact. Something we learn in school and working on timepieces, or where a certain time somebody else who's worked on many of the same timepieces will show us. Those levers and those springs need to be manually adjusted with our tweezers without messing up and pushing just a little too hard, and then pop, they go across the room, and there is the second part to just screw in there. There's no replacement parts. So it's very delicate work what John does. It's very living on the edge of killing everyone around you and yourself at all times.
But also with the adjusted tension of the springs as well, because if you have a spring that's too thick, if you bend it to one extremity of its function, it'll power up a lot. And at the end of its function, it mightn't have enough force. So what we do an awful lot is make the springs an awful lot thinner. So for the proportion of their length, they're thinner. And at the point of the function, you've got, so between one extremity and the other, you have a more constant torque. And does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you kind of thin it and then you bend it stronger. So that it has a more even force throughout its entire function. And the importance of having things not too strong is that, particularly in a mechanism with so levers and if you have something that's too strong, the next thing will be able to push it, and the next thing won't be able to push that along. So you end up making everything stronger, and then there's not enough power to drive.
We're wasting
so
inertia.
There's a real
wasting the
balancing
act.
There's a real balancing act throughout.
It obviously is.
A good example I like to use, John, is perhaps somebody has like a Rolex Daytona or some form of chronograph.
Speak of the devil.
They say why does my my minute recorder, why does it jump 2 numbers sometimes? Why does it jump? Why doesn't it jump properly? And on that wheel called the mounted minute recorder, we have a mounted minute recorder spring. It's very, very thin. It has to be adjusted every time the watch is completely disassembled and overhauled. Most of the time, if the gentleman is not a true watchmaker and traditionally trained, he usually hacks that up and it's broken because it is so thin. It's like the thickness of maybe a little thicker than a human hair, maybe at its center there. And we have to adjust that for proper attention to get that number to jump properly, but not, like John said, suck the power down the line. And now instead of you put your watch down at on your nightstand, and it previously would last 46 hours of rundown till it's dead. Now, if you have a lot of springs that are too tight, you're only going to get 35 hours. So it's just another one of those things that we learn when we're restoring many timepieces.
That's interesting, or that comment, as you mentioned, or the Daytona there that Kenny just mentioned, or that Rolex won't repair his 77 Daytona because they don't have all the parts. So where does Kenny turn to Dan or to John to get that watch repaired? Or
you have specialists. I know Stephen worked with Somlo Antiques, and that subsequently became Stephen Hale Watch Repair. Okay. And I know they specialize in making parts for Daytonas that are obsolete, and so you can, I'd say, short of a Daytona being sawed in half, they'd be able to sort you out. There are specialists out there. Rolex, I think they're a great company, but they're very straight up about how long they guarantee their watches for. And for the vintage pieces, normally, and it depends on the country you're in, but normally the direct clients with very old pieces to a specialist in their area who will be able to sort them out. But
it's a prime example of what I was saying earlier. The law in Switzerland is 20 years. Some companies go beyond because they just have certain parts that you may need on the shelf. But beyond that, legally, they don't have to. And so that's where people such as John and myself, or previously for me, that's what we did. You came into my shop with your vintage Patek Philippe, and there was no more parts. So that's.
Yep.
I saw there was another question earlier on about the Rattrapant wheel.
That's the question there. Yeah.
There you go.
John works a lot on Valjoux 72s, which is probably what's in your old Daytona derivative of that. So he probably has all your parts, but he's not giving you the part.
No, I need it. But the Rattrapant wheel and the no, I'm not. But the Rattrapant wheel in the it is toothed, and it's a steel wheel, and teeth are actually the perfect triangles. They're really, really well cut, and they're tiny. Now they don't work like normal teeth because they don't gear into anything at all. The only purpose they serve is as grips, because you don't want the like when the pincers close on the Rattrapant wheel, you don't want it to slip. Otherwise, the Rattrapant wheel hand, you'll see a little bit of movement as when it's meant to be completely stationary. So the teeth only serve as grips for the pincers, but yes, they're there.
Yep, and that same.
I should also point out there's that photograph there is of the watch after the restoration. The bigger photograph you showed earlier on, Johnny, of the that one there, that's before the restoration. Yeah. So it's not in terrible condition, but everything's a little bit scratched.
Well, I'm going to show you.
Necessitated taking everything apart and rebeveling, regraining, all of the main plates, the bridges, everything was redecorated. It was a work of about a month.
Well, did
a lot of work.
Did you have to re-rhodium anything, John?
No, it's untreated German silver.
Right. Well, we're going to run through this because, we still have some massive news, John, and maybe we should have ran with that from the start.
Yeah, let's get to that
afterwards. But I want to just before we get to the through the restorations, just to show what you're talking about. Before.
I know. At that point there you go.
Beautiful.
So the first photograph, I had done the beveling, and so the bevels are refiled and polished. Sink around the jewel and the screw, they're repolished as well. And there I had to make up jigs for each component that had to be refinished. And there was a circular finish on.
Magnificent.
So that's the escape wheel bridge with it's got a rose gold jewel plate on top.
Yeah.
And flat polishing gold is always tricky. It doesn't, you can polish it, but to remove the last scratch is a pain in the neck. And there it's finally finished. And the screws as well, they're finished. They're flat polished on a tin block with paste. So
magnificent, absolutely. As I said, I wanted that kind of detail sort of accentuates what you do. What is the difference between before and after? And looking at those two components, yes, maybe you can argue that there's different light in that there, but you can see the difference in the finish of the different parts, as you say, the rose gold being mirror polished, basically, and the circular graining. It's just plus the beveling all around. It is astonishing. And I know that we're actually hitting the 1 hour mark. I'm in 2 minds whether to wrap up this and start a new broadcast to look at your other big news. But I think what I might do, I might edit, and we'll make 2 out of this anyway. So that's been fascinating looking at this aspect of the restoration, and like so many other parts of this, Dan and John, we could talk forever about these the different aspects of what you're doing there, because there's so many different parts. It's usually had to break that down. I saw the tray with the components in it, and you know, it's amazing how complex that whole process
what's
is.
more amazing,
I
I think everyone has to understand that John is so old that he didn't have cameras way back when. And he had to remember when he did this kind of work back then, when you take all those parts away, he was drawing little stick figures and keeping those notes very safe somewhere in the safe somewhere.
Absolutely.
So he knew how to put it back
Dan,
together. Now he has phones. He can cheat when he's old.
Hey, Dan, I'm not old. I just look at.
Hey, give them cut the man some slack there.
I look at these young watchmakers with their phones clicking away as they're taking stuff apart, because I'm wondering, wait a minute, this guy just came out of school. Like, how's he doing a minute repeater? Like, it's impossible. It's totally impossible for our generation. Absolutely impossible. And he's click, 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 click. You're cheating, bro. You're cheating.
It's the old days where you'd have sheets of paper, because when you take something apart, you know, you take notes. Because I once got a minute repeater in a bag. It was completely taken apart, and miraculously everything was there. I couldn't believe it, but Listen, one of the problems with this watch, first of all, I'd like to pay a particular tribute to the collector, who's a very passionate collector. He made a big commitment to get that watch done. Like, for me, it's a month's work. For him, it's a lot of money. And but he really wanted to get it right, and so, you know, I tip my hat to the man, because that watch is good for another 130 years. You know, right. Like it's a big commitment.
Amazing. Amazing.
And secondly, it was an honor for me to work a stunning piece, and unfortunately, more and more pieces like that are making their way to me, and I can't tell you what a joy they are to work on. They are, you know, like, it's like peeling a Fabergé onion. You know, every layer you take off exposes another layer of beauty. So anyway.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say also is it gives a lot of independents, such as myself. You'll even see a page on my website where I still accept certain restorations, but it would have to be something like John's doing, something that we passionately love, because it breaks up the monotony of what I'm doing now.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
And for me, it's always about giving back the love. It's been my whole life, you know, with music, and giving that love to someone else, or saving them from a bad time in their life when my music touched them. They were gonna possibly commit even suicide. I've heard many stories face to face with people that, you know, it helped them. It did something. And I always remember when I would get pieces like John's worked on, you know, crazy pieces. And even basic pocket watches, that they would come in and say, this was my grandfather's, this means everything to me. It might not even be too valuable as far as top tier or anything like that, but it was valuable to that person. And when it was restored back to normal, when they brought it to 11 watchmakers who couldn't do this, and they claimed this, that, and the other thing, and it sat in a safe, it could be for 2 generations. And you gave that back to them, like John has to give this watch back. Their face, they all they want to do is jump on you and hug you, like with a bear hug, you know? You know it as soon as they cry. I've seen them cry so many times. And it's like I'm crying with them.
I hope for the right reason.
That's when you give them the bill.
See what happens when I try to explain these loving experiences to these hard-nosed men.
There's the bill.
So you get a call from American Express going, are you sure here?
I'm trying to show them.
If I can make a music,
John, come on now.
If I can make a music analogy as well, I think you know, a dirty secret for watchmakers is we probably get so much more pleasure than the clients do, because, you know, I enjoy listening to music, but Dan, you got to make it and listen to it. So as a watchmaker, you know, we get into the watch, and I think that it's another level that we can appreciate the watch on, that the guy who owns the watch is missing a little bit. And I think so taking the photographs of a work in progress really helps share the enjoyment of working on the watch.
Great analogy.
And you definitely convey that today, and the complexities of what we do was seldom seen before. It was always encapsulated, never seen by anyone but us. And that is the pleasure that we got out of it, why we do what we do. Now, because of social media, we're able to give more and more insight of the complexities of what people made, in candlelight and manual machines. I mean, it's mind boggles us. So it should certainly mind boggle you. And if you're a collector, we welcome to show you inside your timepieces. That's the really cool part of technology today. And what John does is off the chart. Just so anyone understands here, if you're still tuned in, the work that John does and what he's working on, this is not normal work. You can't just come out of school and do this kind of stuff. John's, he's a master, the master of masters. So you're seeing the top of the top of the top of the top from the top tier dude. Wherever he is in his
I know how much you love that, John.
That's borderline calling me a master watchmaker.
You see, okay, folks, for people who are watching here, we're using this term. We're all laughing at the expression "master" here because I did a little bit of work on John's website, and I use the expression "master."
Johnny, you did all the work.
What's above a master? What can I say above master? Master's master.
You can use another language and make it sound more exotic. A maestro,
Godfather. Like Seminary is.
God, maybe that should be a godfather of watchmaking. Yeah, that might sound better. That's a little bit more, cool, isn't it? But no, because people. I use the expression master watchmaker to describe you, Dan, to describe every one of the guests that we've had on so far in the metal, which has been amazing. And the same for John. And I was working on his website, and John contacted me. He says, "Hey man, would you remove that master watchmaker thing there?" And I go, "But that's how I see you, and that's how your audience sees you, your customers." Your customers don't want to buy a masterpiece of an average watchmaker. They want to buy a watch of a master watchmaker, And so yeah, that's
actually, John's way above. I mean, he's working on complications, so he's the master of the master of complications.
Well, here, John, tell me this: you've been working.
I see that someone has just put in a post to kind of take me down a notch or two. So I'd like to say hello to Daniela Moran. She was saying I look a lot more. Hi, Daniela. Good to see you.
It gets better. Harry Potter.
Listen, we got to get to John's new masterpiece.
We do, surely. Yeah,
that's really what I wanted to talk about. I didn't really give a crap about what he's been doing for the last month. I wanted to know about what he's doing now.
Oh my God! So yeah, I agree. We've maybe. We should have ran with this from the very top, because this is a scoop, and this is the first time on In the Metal that we have actually had an exclusive news of a brand new piece, brand new brand. It's Irish, and it's a very personal piece to John. And here, I'm going to shut up and let you have a look at it. Wow. Yeah. This is the Ulan, the HB1. And it is a triple calendar chronograph. And I've been looking at this watch solidly for the last 4 or 5 days, and it is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And in low light with the loom.
That's killer.
It's killer.
That's
it's killer,
dude.
And when we say that it's Swiss and it is Irish, it has this beautiful, famous and historic movement, the Valjoux 88, and John has customized it. You've broken that down to its component part and refinished every single component in that there, and added that. I love the bridge. That harp bridge, which it makes it so. I'm proud of it as an Irishman, and it's so often you would find that people make something that's Irish. It's a little bit twee or it's a little bit kitsch. This is serious, hardcore, beautiful workmanship altogether.
What's twee and kitsch?
Twee is, it's that sort of Irishness. It's where you come over to Kerry or to Cork and you get little Irish souvenirs that are taken home. They're not really authentic Irish. They're sort of playing on a kind of historic story.
Kind of like the leprechaun at the end of the rainbow type of
Precisely.
image.
I did not want to use those words, but you're absolutely right.
I'm pitting Irishmen against Irish.
Who would want to be associated with that?
No, but hey, I tell you what, if you're a shop owner in Killarney, you want to be selling tons of that gear, but this is the absolute antithesis of that sort of faux Irishness.
Gotcha.
And this is, this show's called In the Metal. This is serious.
Oh no, that's serious metal. I mean, we all know that thing's a battleship. We know, people that know. But what John's done to it is just magnificent. It's wow,
Well,
superb. And
I think, yeah.
So yes, let's give us a bit. Talk us through.
Okay, I think it's apt that this follows up from the restoration I did, because there's an awful lot of similarities between the work I did on the last watch. Captain Forrest, you're the man. But between the work I did in that watch and the work I did on this, so it's an existing movement. It's not a ground up build like Dan is doing. It's not my design or anything like that. I had the good fortune of coming across the value, a healthy stock, I don't want to say how many, of the Value 88, which is of the family of chronographs that the Value 23, the 72, all of these really iconic movements that were used by many of the top Swiss bands, and Patek Philippe, Rolex, Vache all used them. And they now, in auctions, they would come up from time to time at really insane prices. I was fortunate enough to come across a stock of unused stock from of these. They had an average finish on it, and I knew immediately I wanted to strip them down to their component form, right down to the smallest component, refinish everything again. I've made some components. I finished all components, all of the functions. It was a design that worked extremely well, but even on the they were never properly polished or anything like that. So I've managed to improve the function by polishing all of the functions, much the way we would have done the minute repeater. And so I've applied the crafts, the techniques that I would have employed on the more complicated watches that I've been making for the past 20 years. And I've tried to distill it all into this watch. It's wrapped in a lovely titanium case. We worked very, very hard on the case, and I want to talk a bit more about the case in a minute. But so it's a mixture of classical watchmaking in a contemporary case with a nod to the past. And I've never seen a Value 88. It has the triple counter mechanism is on the dial side. I've never seen one with a movement exposed on the dial side. I think that's a first for an 88, and there was a lot of work refinishing all of those components as well. So, and I've smoked the smoke sapphire insert underneath the printed section of the dial, and that gives a good background for the graphics. It improves the legibility of the watch. So Yeah, that's it. That's my
absolutely
baby.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's extremely legible. You really did accomplish that mission big time, big time. Are you?
And it's
I don't know where you found these movements. I don't know where the secret stash was, but it's obviously a dream come true of people who know. You know, you. I mean, look at the guy with his Rolex that just wrote in before. He's looking for a part for his Valjoux 72. Bro, your part's in this watch. These are hard to find, so I don't know how John did it. Did you after you strip these down, John? Is this NOS, or you have to do full restorations on all these?
Sorry,
Are the movements new old
say
stock?
that again, Dan?
Were these movements that you acquired?
It's new old stock.
Oh wow, amazing.
It's new old stock, but you know, I've redone the building and all of the steel parts, all of the bridges. I've changed the shape of the bridges to have interior corners. I've made some components where I wasn't happy with the finish, just to, you know, get a nicer function or a nicer finish. All of the plates and bridges are completely redecorated, and you can see it's hand finishing. Like the beveling is all done by hand.
Oh no, yeah. It's
the steel.
Yeah,
The steel work is finished on shellac stone, so you get a nice cleaner. The screws they're beveled and they're flat polished on tin block and everything like that. So it's they're traditional techniques to bring this to this level.
Was the rhodium plating still intact, or did you have to strip that down on the plates?
No, I stripped everything off. So it's gold plating on this one, and but I can do, because it's built up completely. I can vary the finish.
So you've after stripping them down, you're actually all the main plates and bridges. You've had to re-rhodium plate them.
Absolutely, but every surface is refinished. Like on the standard 88, all of the bridges are rounded. They don't have any sharp interior corners or anything like that. So the bridges, they're reprofiled. I have to file everything and machine some other part. You machine some of the parts as well for them to fit nicely. And then it's every component is hand finished to get nice even beveling.
Absolutely beautiful
polish.
Yeah, I mean, I think
so,
John, what you should also what I'm trying to convey to people is, just because we see these mechanisms like this chronograph that we're looking at here, this is base Ebosh Valjoux 72 on this side, doesn't mean that the mechanism works perfectly from the factory. Even the standards they're sold,
and it didn't.
That's what I'm trying to get this out, John, because people are just going to think like he took a movement and popped it, and polished it up. So what I'm trying to explain to them is, way back when, companies like Valjoux would produce different levels of Ebosh, just like ITA does today. So you can get low level. So they would quickly, either non-plated or plated, just really crappy, not decorated, no perlage, no anything, and quickly timed. And the hammers that run the chronograph, they're not finely tuned. So it's kind of like getting a raw car engine, and then you have to take it to someone like John, who would be your Ferrari tuner, completely disassemble the engine. And you know what happens when you brought your old car to someone like John? He'd be cursing the whole way, saying, "What kind of idiot worked on this?" And that's basically what we have. And we're basically John is starting over again, making a brand new watch. And making it at its highest level of expertise, timekeeping, and of course the tradition of haute horlogerie. And where in the end, you have to ask him where he got his shellac stone, because that's the rarest stone that we hunt for. If you don't know what that is,
very true. I'd like to talk about the case and the overall design of the watch. I worked with a very good friend and an immensely talented man who is too modest to say it himself, Graham Houghton. He has two watches here in Ireland as well, SAS watches and Melita watches. And he's just been a friend for a good many years now. And when I started with this project, I wanted him to do 3D work for me because he's much better at it than I am on CAD, and I mean much better. And so I was trying to put ideas down and stuff like that, and then Graham came to the party with so many ideas, and he really elevated this watch to what it is, and it was a great pleasure working with him on it. And he blanches every time I call him a watch designer, but look at this, he clearly is.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
he's done
magnificent, man.
contribution to this watch.
It's just nailed in every
So
every
that's
way.
great.
It's the proportions, everything is just nailed.
Yeah. And there's a lot of work there's a lot of to and froing between the two of us on, trying to get the right tension, because I wanted a watch that really embraced the movement. I think an awful lot of modern watches have cases that are too heavy for the movement, and but it's also, the case is 40 millimeters in diameter, which for a waterproof, I mean, it's only waterproof to 3 atmospheres, but as a modern watch, it has to be waterproof. But to shrink that around a movement of that size, that thickness, keep it within a reasonable thickness, and then an awful lot of work has gone into, on the sides of the case, the back of the case, to disguise any height that is inherent because it's a chronograph with a triple calendar mechanism. There's a good lump of a movement in there. But much like the watches from the 50s and 60s that used this movement, I always admired the proportions of the cases. Now, they're not waterproof. They've no water resistance whatsoever, whereas this is, and that takes up a certain amount of volume. So there's a lot of work went into the surfacing to satisfy those two criteria, to achieve that classical look, or those classical proportions, while within keep the watch as small as that, and not make it appear too tall as well. So
beautiful.
It really is.
I think a lot of people, such as even myself, I'm a Universal Geneva Tricompax is my favorite timepiece. But the problem with wearing those vintage watches, I mean, I could obviously restore one even if it was missing whatever parts, it doesn't matter. Back then they were just dust proof, and that don't work for me. I mean, at least I have to wash my hands in the sink. I have to actually take my watch off, and that's what people did back then. It's what they did. But being able to have the beauty of yesteryear's movements brought up to today's standards and beyond, AHCI, kind of standards by John, and wear it every day. I wouldn't cut down that 90-foot waterproof. That's what, as far as I'm concerned, that's waterproof. I don't understand why people don't get that when they read that on watches, on dress watches of nowadays. It's not 330 feet deep waterproof. Well, you're not going 330 feet deep, because if you did, you'd be dead anyway, bro. I used to take scuba diving. I know when you're going to die. Okay. So 100 feet, where are you going? Don't wear it in the hot tub. I mean, that's kind of, you really shouldn't, it's excessive heat.
With a watch like this as well, I wouldn't, it really dissuade people from going for a swim with it. Like, why would you go for a swim?
Why would you? Just because you can.
The reason why
you should. And it's pouring rain, you live in a rainy kind of place like England or something like that. You have no worries. You're all set. You don't have to worry.
Yeah.
I worked in one of my first job after Woolstep. I worked in Bermuda for a year. And I worked in a Rolex after service, with a chain of stores that sold Rolex, that sold Piaget, Cartier watches like that. And when I was at the beach at the weekend, in Bermuda, it's a small island. The speed limit, I think, is 50 kilometers an hour for the entire island. Could be 30 kilometers. I can't remember. It's really slow. No one has a nice car. They all drive wrecks. Why would you have a nice car there? It's immensely, it's a very, very prosperous country.
Mhm.
And so people use their money to spend it on other stuff. So they'd wear really expensive jewelry. Like walking down the street, everybody would have an Enamel, which were the Rolex from the 90s, like everybody wore them there, or a Rolex, Cartier, whatever. And the Rolex you wouldn't be too concerned about because they're very, very well designed when it comes to water resistance. But I'd be sitting on the beach during the weekend, and you'd see people going by with diamond-encrusted Cartiers and Piagets and stuff like that. Watches that, you really, there's water resistance there to protect them in a shower of rain. You're not meant to swim with them. You're really not. I mean, Cartier would kind of say the same,
Mhm.
And you'd see this diamond encrusted watch on someone's wrist, and you kind of go, "Oh my God, I'm going to see that on Monday."
Yeah.
And true enough, Monday morning you got a rake.
Or people are wondering why there
yeah,
isn't a lot of value, 88s and 72s and so on and so forth around still. It's because people like John and I, we would get on our bench people who actually did that with these dustproof watches, and then we get water in it. They didn't want to bring it into the watchmaker, and they just put it away. And within 24 to 48 hours, it's almost hermetically sealed, even though it was just dustproof watches. All that steel that you're seeing on John's movement, it just starts to pit and rust. I mean, really swiftly. A Rolex is even worse because it's very much. It's within 24 hours. It's a rust bucket, and it gets beyond the point where we can really repair it. If they let it sit for 3, 4, 5 years somewhere, then they bring it in. And then the movements are gone. The hairspring's rusted, everything's rusted, and there's nothing we can do. So the watches back then were discarded, and we would tell them to go, buy a battery watch. If you're gonna treat this like that, you don't deserve it.
Fantastic. But here we're approaching the hour.
Another person,
you got to give John's new website that you created there, Johnny. Just so you know, again, Johnny's, Johnny's other amazing, incredible thing that he gives to independent watchmakers behind the scenes, besides amazing writing and showing the public the people that we are behind the scenes, is he made John an incredible website, even though it's not complete. I know you'll say it's not complete. You just threw it up.
It's far from finished.
And you can explain why you threw it up before we go.
I'd just like to say, a big thank you to you, Johnny, for the work you did on the website and all of the embarrassing things that I'm going to get you to change. Saying how great I am, but listen, Johnny is a fantastic communicator.
Yes.
That is the reason why I went to that man to get this done. I could have gone to anyone. But I really want Johnny to do the work on the website because he gets it. He gets, where I'm coming from. He gets the watch end, and he knows how to convey it in such a clear, and it's not just the clarity. You do it in you do it in your own poetic way as well, Johnny. So thank you so much.
Man, it's an absolute pleasure. It really is.
And I know sorry, the reason why there's more to do, it's because I have to give him more photographs. I didn't give him enough material, so don't blame him.
Thank you.
Another reason I started the show is, he's such a blessing to all of us because things we can't get out, right, John? He weaves between our thoughts, and he can get it onto paper somehow. I don't know how he does it, but he's a blessing to the all us independent watchmakers to convey our message to those that will listen and
it comes from the heart, guys. It comes from the heart. It comes from the heart. I didn't get the chance to become to do what you guys did. I came to this too late in life to do it. There wasn't the opportunity, as we talked about. The Swiss Irish Watchmaking Institute did not exist whenever I discovered this amazing world, and so I didn't have an opportunity to do that. But I do have an appreciation of how flipping painstaking it is to use wood and paste to get a mirror polish on a curved edge around a movement plate, and the amount of time that it takes to do that. And that's just one little aspect that so many people will look at a watch and they look at the back of it and go, that's beautiful. But that inspection takes 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And in each one of those watches that are handmade by you guys, like I get it. You said you used the expression that Johnny gets it. I do get it. And I marvel at that level of expertise, not even expertise, the dedication, the passion, because that is not something a lot of people would throw their hat at it very early on and say, to hell with this, it's good enough. But not you guys. You keep pushing the parameters of what one would consider to be perfection. And I bet you, whenever you're finished, you still think, I could have, you know what I mean? So, look, thanks a million for the.
Wait, give a shout out to the new website. Where is it? What is it?
The new, right. Well, I think, John, that, okay, I'll try and describe it. The watch is called Ulan. Ulan is Irish.
Elon. So if you
Elon.
pronounce it's I have a bit of a job of education with the name, because it's not pronounced the way it's written. It's written Olean, right? But it's pronounced Elon, as in ILLAWN, right? Elon, if you're to spell it phonetically, right?
Yes.
Not difficult to pronounce, but you need to know.
What's the .com?
Sorry, was there more, Johnny?
It's
no, that's it. It's www.ilon.watch. It's not .com.
it's a new URL.
Maybe
if you just put ilon.watch, it won't work. Just put the.
It should do. I think now. But anyway,
So John, do you know how many you'll be able to produce in this series?
That was the question I was going to ask. Yeah.
Good question. Absolutely. I am not going. Like, they are numbered pieces, and I can't make more than 10 a year because of the method. Because of the way I make them. They're very labor intensive.
Right.
So I'm not going to determine exactly how many pieces I'm going to make. Suffice to say, it's going to be a rare piece.
Understood.
And I'm also not going to fool around with the numbers. Like, there will only be number one, and it'll go chronologically from there. So if I make 50 or more pieces, it'll be 50 or more, It worked for Philippe with his simplicity, and I don't see why you should have to do it any other way. I think this business of breaking down small batches of 30 or 20 or something like that, it's officially limited number, so I'm not.
I'm totally on board with that. I think that's another part of making independent. We can write our own rules. We don't need a sales pitch. Most of us are, have backed up work for many years when we create our own art. This is not a watch. Everyone who is still listening, John creates art. This is your chance to not only get his art, but something inside there that everyone dreams to have, a vintage movement that's brought back to life at its highest form by a master. It can't last forever, and if I was you, I would jump on it rather swiftly and visit his website, and a chance to also speak directly with the watchmaker, who is the artist, and that's what independent watchmaking is about. That's what this show is about, getting inside the mind and the complexity of who these people are. We're all, twisted. We all have OCD, but we all love what we do beyond love, passion.
Yeah.
When we finish something, we don't want to let it go, just like any other true artist. And
sure.
John is at the top.
I know Johnny's looking at the clock in the corner, so I'd just like to finish by making Johnny squirm a little bit more. We're going to call you the master communicator. How do you like that now?
That's great.
I was wondering what the hell took you so long,
The master communicator.
Yeah, I think I might get a T-shirt with that on it, and
That's a good idea.
Well, you can start by trying to get your family to call you that and see if that's right.
Yeah, that'll work, man. I can tell you that'll work. Yeah, they really appreciate me.
I'm still flipping out that there's another McGonigle somewhere in another country teaching watchmaking.
Don't you know? Yeah, absolutely. Listen, okay, you were right. I am looking at the clock here. I want to wrap up here tonight and say, look, thank you so much indeed for being game to come on and be, as I said, like, we're lucky to have the guests that we have, and so for you to come on again as not only as a guest but as a friend of the show, John, has been absolutely fantastic. It's something that Dan and I both want, a direction that we want to take it in, so there's a little bit of variety. I have so much enjoyed talking about the restorations tonight, and look at that bad boy, the the great wheel.
Ooh, that's nice. It's finished. Cool.
The great wheel.
Great wheel. Offset great wheel.
Yeah. It doesn't.
I don't have a center.
It's called the Great Wheel because it's one of the biggest components in the watch. It's not that big.
It's big.
It looks beautiful.
Amazing.
I want to see it.
There's a post on Instagram now if anyone would want to see it. I think a little bit more clear. It's an offset. My gear chain's offset from center, so it'll be on the right side, and it looks badass.
Brilliant. Well, guys, it's been an absolute fantastic. I'm delighted with how it went tonight. I've loved looking at an aspect of watchmaking, and again, it's amazing. You could talk about it forever. It wouldn't bore us. It would probably bore our audience. So we need to come back and we'll talk about it again. John, thanks a million. I wish you the very.
I think it could be worth maybe some evening, and with whoever you're working with, going through maybe a small complication, because the Jorgensen is a multi-complication. You can't do any part of it adequate justice. So maybe a smaller part of a complication could be could fill an evening, you know.
Well, what I am thinking of doing, I think Dan's agreement with me that we take maybe some evenings we're going to have guests, and some evenings we're going to have yourself or a couple of some of our friends, and we're going to look at a complication on its own, be it the chronograph, be it as we mentioned the other day when we were talking on the phone, the power reserve system, how that little indication is put together, and it looks like it's a little minor detail. None of these things are simple. Hey, even a 3 hands timepiece is there's very little straightforward, and from where I'm sitting looking at it, I can appreciate it. So every part we'd like to go through. So the complications, and then we'd maybe like to go through the finishings, the techniques for decoration, guillochage or enamel or croissant enamelling, or be it even applying loom, things get there. How do you do this? That's what we want to know, and that's what In the Metal is about. That we find out what these things
later on after through the pandemic and all that. You know, I think when me and Johnny set out to do this, when we start to travel, obviously I'll have to travel a little bit with my timepiece. We want to infiltrate people's shops like yours, not bother them for too long, and do something just like you said, John. It's a great idea, and we're listening to people like you.
Hey, Graham.
Yeah, so we'll infiltrate and we'll steal some of your lifetime from an old man who doesn't have much left.
Hey, enough about me. And
he's talking about me.
So look, guys, we've had a fantastic episode again. This just keeps getting better and better and better. I am loving it, and people who are watching, I hope you're loving it too, because it's a little bit different. It's maybe a little bit longer than some other broadcasts, and but we hope that you're enjoying it, and to have somebody the caliber of that average watchmaker John McGonigle and the master watchmaker Dan Spitz, that it's an absolute treat to have people like us on board to be able to talk about this amazing subject. And so thank you everyone for watching, and from me, good night from Dan.
Enjoyed it. And we'll continue, Johnny. We'll just continue on.
See you guys.
Thank you, John, so much for everything. As always,
Okay.
man,
Thank you, both of you. Okay.
Top, bro. I love to kid around with you, but you know, I don't even know what to say. Your work is impeccable, amazing. Beyond people should be lining up for many, many years to get this new piece of yours, for sure, for sure. We wish you all the best.
Absolutely, best of success with it.
Thank you
everybody for watching In the Metal, and we will be back again next week. We have another mad guest on next week, and we have the diary starting to fill up. So make sure you join us again, make a note of it, and we'll do a few reminders during the week. And thank you everyone for watching In the Metal, and we will catch you next time around. Bye.
Bye.